Hey, good Friday evening, everybody. Welcome back. Great to see you. Hopefully, we had a wonderful week. Unfortunately, though, things are really picking up here in the tropics. In fact, we're now up to 3 separate areas to watch in the Atlantic Ocean, including one currently on the doorstep of the Gulf Coast. Another one could potentially form into a hurricane, and that one could bring impacts also to the Gulf Coast states here in the 7 to 10 day time frame. And all of that, we have more waves coming off of Africa that we also need to watch. So, very active stretch here in the tropics, and because of that, I've got an update here for you this evening on what we're seeing. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Gerald. I'm a meteorology major at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, here to give you the latest on what we're seeing currently and what we're planning on seeing here on down the road as the tropics really pick up. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely do so. We're trying to get to 10,000 here by the end of hurricane season, and we're knocking on the doorstep. Only about 900 more to go. So again, you can definitely help us out by hitting that subscribe button, and while you're at it, hit that bell for the latest notifications. That'll keep you up to date with the latest uploads here. And every time I upload, you'll be the first to find out with the latest model runs, the latest model guidance, and the latest kind of interpretation of all of that guidance on what could happen on down the road. Also, like the video and comment. Let me know where you're watching from and what you're doing to prepare as we enter peak hurricane season. Now, for my regulars, this video will be entirely geared towards the tropics. I will not be talking about anything other than that. Now, we'll mention some other things happening back home, obviously, as well that involve the tropics. But again, if you're looking for more of a local or national forecast, come back tomorrow morning for an update nationally, or you can go back and watch this morning's video for an update there. But with that said, let's go ahead and jump on into things because, again, a good bit going on out there. Now, I'm going to just very briefly kind of take an overview here. Then we're going to dive in region by region in the tropics and really give you a good in-depth breakdown on everything that we're seeing. Now, the three main areas we're watching, I'm going to go ahead and circle. We'll call this Area 1 in the Gulf. This we'll call Area 2 in the main development region, and then we'll call this Area 3 behind it. So, in fact, I'll even go ahead and just kind of put numbers next to them just so you can kind of keep up with that. So, Area 1, again, that's one that is now designated as an area to watch by the National Hurricane Center, and it's kind of just been meandering near the Texas and Louisiana Gulf Coast. We'll talk about that one first, and we'll zoom in here in just a second. Area 2, that's an area we've been watching for a while now. The National Hurricane Center is also watching it. And that's the one I'm concerned about for high-end impacts on down the road. Now, Area 1, we're already seeing impacts, and we will continue to do so whether we see tropical development or not. That second area, though, this one really has the potential to form into a hurricane and potentially a powerful hurricane somewhere in the Caribbean, and unfortunately also has the chance to get into the Gulf of Mexico, which I've been talking about it for a couple weeks now. The Gulf of Mexico is just a ticking time bomb here with those very warm sea surface temperatures. If a storm can get in there with limited dry air and limited wind shear, we unfortunately really could see quite a big deal, and this one has that potential. Now, I don't say that to scare you. I just say it to keep you up to date here and keep you informed with as much of a lead time as possible. And obviously, we'll hope nothing forms. We'll hope it's not a problem, but I want you to know it very well could be here in the 7 to 10 day range. Now, Area 3, good news here, that one may develop, but it's so far out there and the steering currents are kind of weak right now. So that one we've got a lot more questions than answers on currently, and we'll have plenty of time to get to that one. And we will briefly touch on it today, but on down the road, again, that's something we'll watch a little bit more closely. Now, latest from the National Hurricane Center, again, 3 separate areas. Earlier this week, we had no areas on this map, and I told you, I said the end of August, start of September, things were going to pick up, and sure enough, here we are, August 30th, and look at the map, really starting to fill in here. So, again, Area 1 near the Gulf at about a 20% chance of development within the next 7 days. Area 2 at a 40% chance of development in the next 7 days, and Area 3 also at a 20% chance of development. So, nothing is at high right now. We don't have any red on the map, but I do suspect by the time we end out the weekend here, I'd be very surprised if we don't see some red here with this area into the Caribbean. And I think also this area off the coast of Texas and Louisiana has been uptrending. We could see that transition to an orange color in the coming days, and we'll break all of that down for you. But again, that's the latest map from the National Hurricane Center. Now let's zoom in towards the Gulf states and start talking about this first area of interest. Now, this is one that I think has caught a lot of people by surprise. And again, you look at this on satellite and you're saying, well, I mean, this is looking pretty healthy. Look at all these thunderstorms firing off the coast of Houston, just south of Louisiana there as well. And you can even see, look at some of this banding. I mean, this thing has got some pretty good kind of outflow to it here. And because of that, we do have that potential of development. Also, dry air is at a relative minimum right now. Now on the south side here, we are lacking a little bit of convection, but for this to just be an area of interest with only a 20% chance of development, quite a healthy looking system here. And the reason it's going to have a chance to develop is it's just kind of meandering. This, very likely won't just move inland to Texas and Louisiana over the coming days. We have very weak flow out here right now, so not much is moving this either direction. And because of that, again, it's just kind of sitting over these warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Now, outside of there, another area here over the Bahamas. This one not designated as an area of interest, but a similar story here. Pretty healthy looking little, wave here, if you will, with some pretty good storm activity. And look at how this one's spinning too, definitely with some vorticity there in at least the mid-levels. So it's an active scene on satellite out in this part of the country. And because of that, again, we need to watch these. And I mentioned that in my video this morning, going through the next couple of days, we'll continue to watch these. So very healthy looking on satellite. We'll continue to monitor that. And if we take a look at the latest models here, I'm going to start with the high resolution rapid refresh. Now, this is not a hurricane model, but, with storms this close to land, it can do all right sometimes. So I figured I'd show it. And this is getting into this evening, again, Friday evening. You'll notice all this rain over East Texas and through much of Louisiana and southern Arkansas. This is due to this tropical system just feeding Gulf moisture into these areas. And that will continue through the overnight hours. You'll notice widespread showers and storms continuing, but as we get into tomorrow, look what happens here. This tries to get offshore and, continue to close off that low pressure towards the surface. And again, this was not being watched this morning. At least it didn't have a chance of development from the NHC. Now it does. And I think things are upticking here pretty quickly. Again, this model showing that, and throughout the day Saturday, throughout the day Sunday, just continuing to meander here off the Texas and Louisiana coastline, and potentially trying to wrap up a circulation and getting a name here by the end of the weekend or into early next week. Now, that's just one model, and again, it's a short-range model, so not the best to use with hurricanes, but again, I think it may be onto something, because if we look at the icon, and this is a model I'll mention that did very good with Beryl, which was in a very similar part of the world here, so, sometimes some models are a little bit better in some places than others, so we'll show the icon, and it also develops this. Look at this, tomorrow afternoon, we've got some low pressure trying to form at the surface here with some tropical characteristics to it, and we move this ahead into time, and it continues to just slowly spin offshore early next week, and eventually again strengthens towards a tropical depression or tropical storm before finally kind of moving inland really a good 5 or 7 days from now. So this is one we're going to be watching for a while, and again, anytime you have a storm sitting over the Gulf for this amount of time, you're going to want to watch it because it's going to have that potential to develop into something. And again, I don't think this is going to become a hurricane or a major hurricane, definitely not by any means, but nonetheless, this could spin up and get a quick name, and that's going to be very possible. Now, also, either way, whether this gets a name or not, we're going to have a bit of a flooding concern here over the next 7 days. Some places could see more than 10 inches of rain from Houston through the southern coast of Louisiana here. So a lot of rain, and even a little bit of some enhanced onshore flow. Again, if low pressure does form at the surface, not a lot by any means, but enough that during high tide, this could kind of exacerbate even a tiny amount of coastal flooding. So you'll want to watch out for that as well. So again, this one, not a huge impact, but a lot of rain, some gusty winds, and could try to form up into a quick tropical system. And we will definitely monitor that as well here over the next couple of days. But again, I'll quickly mention this. Steering currents are quite weak. If we take a look right now, we've got a big ridge of high pressure out west and a trough to the north. But down here in this region, these isobars are quite separated apart, just meaning, in this region, we're not seeing a lot of flow. And I can even change this map just to show you the winds, again, at about 500 millibars. Just kind of lacking flow. Notice how these wind barbs are moving in different directions. They're not very strong. So just not really much to pick this up. But potentially, again, I think by the time we get into next weekend, we should see maybe, something be able to move on through and try to pick this up. Again, this is next weekend. Look at that. Finally being able to get a lot more of these stronger winds down here, and that should move it out of here. So, something we'll watch for a while here, and will definitely be interesting to see, but no major concerns, but definitely important enough. I think it's worth mentioning in the video. All right, so that's Area 1. Now to Area 2 and Area 3. These both are out in the main development region of the Atlantic, or the ITCZ, or the Intertropical Convergence Zone, whatever you want to call it. This is where storms like to form this time of year, and because of that, we need to watch it. Now, again, a couple areas of interest. We've got one little spin right here. Again, I'll circle it, and then another area behind it with this wave. So these waves have become healthier looking over the past couple of days. They've become a little bit better organized, and that's going to be the theme. Again, we're getting towards peak hurricane season here. So this is what you would expect. You would expect these storms to organize a little bit quicker, become stronger quicker, and just kind of have more tropical characteristics. And that's definitely what we're seeing on satellite. Now, again, I think both of these are still a ways away from any kind of name. Excuse me, sorry. I don't think, you'll wake up tomorrow with a tropical storm. In fact, I really don't think we'll see any tropical development this weekend at all with these. But as we get into early next week, I think tropical development is going to be much more likely. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into this area because, again, this is the one I think I would say I'm most concerned about. And many of us in the weather community are keeping a very close eye on it. So I'm going to go ahead and just move this ahead into time. This is the latest European model. And this is Monday afternoon. You'll notice here's that area. It kind of moves through more of the Atlantic here, and eventually by the time we're getting into Monday afternoon, you folks here in the Central Antilles, right through this section of islands, you've got a bit of a storm system knocking on your doorstep. This would probably be a weak tropical depression, maybe a tropical storm, but getting its act together and moving into an environment that is quite favorable for development. And, we'll continue to monitor that. Now, how quickly this forms will be very important for the forecast. One, on where it goes, and obviously, what impacts we'll see. So I think for you folks here in the islands here from Puerto Rico through the Nits and Nevis Islands, the Virgin Islands, and then all the way down towards South America, I think this is going to be a storm that the ceiling is probably going to be tropical storm, but we'll need to watch it. Again, if this spins up a little bit quicker over the weekend, we could have a higher end tropical storm moving on through. But right now, most of the models keep this relatively weak. Tropical depression, tropical storm, maybe even still an open wave whenever it moves on through here Monday afternoon. Now, after that, the European really begins to strengthen this south of Hispaniola, and by the time we get into Wednesday afternoon, we've got a tropical storm here, moving towards the island of Jamaica. And I forgot to pull it up here, I probably should have, but if we look at the ingredients through here, I'll just go ahead and tell you, humidity values are plenty high enough, or there's a lack of dry air is another way to put it. So that ingredient, we definitely got that one checked off. Also, wind shear looks to be relaxing in this part of the ocean come next week, and because of that, the European really strengthens this. Again, moves it just south of Hispaniola, then just south of Jamaica by Thursday, although bringing some impacts. And then really kind of ramps up the intensification here into next weekend before eventually potentially impacting the Yucatan Peninsula around next Sunday and into the Gulf as a strong hurricane about 10 days from now. So, anytime you see this track, it's a concerning one. One for the islands here, Jamaica, Cuba, Hispaniola, even the Yucatan Peninsula, obviously a concern for you folks in the more near term. But for us folks in the United States, from Texas through Florida, there's a very big difference from a storm forming in the Gulf and getting into the Gulf. A lot of the times, the one thing that saves us with these storms we've had recently is they form in the Gulf of Mexico, and by the time they're getting their core really together, they're moving inland. A storm like this would already have a compact core put together. Now, obviously, if it were to move over islands beforehand, then that would, limit that core. But assuming that it has a compact core like this model shows and then gets into the Gulf, rapid intensification is a much easier process to undergo. And again, it's a concerning trend on some of the models. Now, not all the models are in agreement. I'll show you the GFS here. This is this coming Monday and Monday afternoon. Here is our storm system, or really just an open wave at this point. Again, same thing the Euro showed, just a little bit weaker here, working on through the Antilles. Again, that would be Monday. We move this further ahead into time into, about a week or so from now, and you're wondering, well, where's the storm? The GFS just doesn't really form it here nearly as quickly. I'm sorry, you can't really see that color at all, or at least in that format there. But there's where the general wave axis is. The GFS, though, just not forming it like the European did, which is good, obviously. However, just a run or two ago, the GFS showed the exact same thing the Euro just showed. So the models are going to bounce back and forth a little bit. But either way, then we get out ahead into time, and then the GFS finally wraps the storm system up. So, it's going to be a tough forecast for everybody, but even just in the near term, where the storm forms will mean a lot for impacts. Obviously, one in the Antilles, assuming it stays south of Puerto Rico and Hispaniola, impacts either way would be relatively limited outside of some rain bands and some rough seas and maybe a little bit of surge. Jamaica, again, where it forms, it's going to be a very big deal. How strong it is going to be a very big deal as you're kind of right in the path here. But the GFS, again, after staying quiet in the Caribbean, gets near the Gulf and then, kind of really takes it off here and gets us into, again, a powerful hurricane moving towards the Gulf Coast states about 10 to 12 days from now. So two models, two different outputs, but same final destination here, if you will, a strong storm getting into the Gulf of Mexico about 10 days from now. So both of those are concerning outlooks to see. We take a look at the Canadian model. And a similar story. This is Monday. Again, here's the storm near the Antilles. Not hard to see here wrapping up, getting towards tropical storm strength, and then eventually working on through the Caribbean here, strengthening as it moves south of the islands, even south of Jamaica here on the Canadian, and then strengthens up towards hurricane status. And much like the European, hits the Yucatan Peninsula, and then again finding its way into the Gulf here about 10 days from now. So just to kind of recap these three models, again, the Canadian is here. The European is here, and the GFS, let me see if I can pick a different color, is here. So within 10 days, we have three major global models with a storm system in the Gulf of Mexico. All three of them show it. Again, these big three, if you will. Now, these are not the only models we use, obviously, but if I showed you the icon, it's a similar story. It forms this storm. In fact, it forms it a little bit quicker and is a little bit closer to you folks into Hispaniola. So, you'll need to watch that for sure as well. But again, just a concerning trend here, getting towards peak hurricane season and all major global models showing a pretty good, or I say good, for the storm itself, it's good, it's strong, but not good for any of us, obviously, but a pretty powerful looking storm system here in the Gulf of Mexico in about 10 days. Now, again, not every model is on board. I'll show you one of our new models. This is the Euro AI model, and this model has done okay at some points, other points not so much. Again, it's a newer one, so we don't have a huge data set to go off of here, but I'll show it to you. It starts the same way, although just moving this ahead, development is much slower and never really happens on the Euro AI model. Now, because of that, there's a very big key difference in the track. Now, because, again, it doesn't really form, it doesn't really try to get north. Now, stronger storm systems will always try to pull north, and this one, again, is just never strong, so it just kind of shoots into Central America here as a weaker storm system. Now, personally, I find that to be a less likely scenario. I think the European, the GFS, and potentially even the Canadian are probably a little bit more onto something here. If I had to kind of draw a cone right now, I would say probably somewhere in this path right here would be the most likely outcome right now. So again, this is possible. I just think it's less likely, but I wanted to show it to you because, again, just to show you that we do still have some uncertainty here in the forecast. Now, on down the road, where is the storm going to go? Now, within the near term, unfortunately, again, the storm is so far south in latitude and the Bermuda high is strong enough that it's just going to kind of push it, again, through the islands here and into the Caribbean. Now, once it gets to this point, this is where the question marks begin. I think, again, from Hispaniola to where we are now, we feel pretty confident the storm's going to move through the Leeward Islands, get towards the Caribbean, south of Puerto Rico, probably, maybe close, but probably south of Hispaniola. After that, the question is, when does it turn north? Does it ever turn north? Does it turn north quickly? Does it kind of move towards the Yucatan, then turn north over Cuba? Does it move through the Yucatan, then turn north through the Gulf of Mexico? Or does it just never really form and just kind of keep moving towards Central America? All of these are still options on the table, but one concerning trend is I do think it is going to turn north, and unfortunately, that turn north could be problematic for the United States. Now, this is getting 7 to 10 days out. This is our GFS ensembles, so again, all those members of the GFS thrown together and show our 500 millibar height anomalies, and notice this area blue. This is the concern. Now, while some of us are, while some of us are going to be excited to see that area of blue because it's going to bring some more fall-like weather, it's going to bring drier air on the backside, it's going to make things feel like October compared to maybe August or September. What this does is acts as an off-ramp on a highway. So if we pretend that where the storm is traveling right now is just a highway, we'll just kind of say right here, what happens, unfortunately, is this creates a weakness in the flow. And again, this is kind of an off-ramp. So imagine this is an exit on the highway that the storm is just going to generally want to take because there's nothing pushing it on the highway anymore. So again, stronger storm, it's going to want to pull north. And unfortunately, that area to the north is the United States, specifically the Gulf Coast. Now, that pull north could again happen later than this. It could happen sooner. It could happen near the Bahamas. It could happen near Texas. It's just too far out to really know. And again, the strength of the storm is going to be a big time help in kind of forecasting that. Now, if we take a look at some ensembles here, these are the European ensembles 7 days from now. So a week from now, this is next Friday, you'll notice just about all of them have this in the Caribbean and most of them developing it into a storm, some of which into a powerful storm. Again, I would not be surprised. Again, this is also a very similar track to Beryl, if you remember correctly. And we saw what Beryl did with the right ingredients. A storm in this part of the world can really take off quickly. So not to say that this will be Beryl. It could be weaker than Beryl. Obviously, we'll hope it is. We don't want another Category 5 by any means. But again, it's a similar track. It's a similar setup. And 7 days out, a lot of models having a storm there in the Caribbean. Also, behind it, here's Area 3 that I was mentioning earlier. So again, we'll briefly touch on that here in a second. But let's zoom on in a little bit here towards the Gulf. 10 days from now, what does it look like? Well, again, the European and its ensembles have a storm anywhere from the Bahamas to, the Yucatan Peninsula. So the range here is wide, but you get the gist. This gets towards Cuba and the Yucatan and then wants to pull north at some point. And also, look at these colors here. See these pinks, see these reds, see these oranges. These are strong hurricanes. These are hurricanes up near 70, 80, 90, 100 knots in straight line winds. So the ingredients are looking favorable for a strong storm. The track is looking unfavorable for the United States in the sense that it could be coming towards us here in 10 or so days. So it's something we need to watch for sure. And the good news is we have time to prepare. Again, we're still 10 to 15 days away from any sort of impacts here in the United States. But again, you folks in Jamaica, the Yucatan, Cuba, and even the Antilles, less time than that. So you're going to want to go ahead and, just kind of go through your hurricane plan. Make sure you have one. Make sure you have a hurricane kit and just know what your procedure is should a storm be coming your way. And again, that goes for anyone through the Gulf Coast or the Caribbean. Now, the GFS and its ensembles, again, 7 days from now, you'll notice most of them here, I say most of them, probably about half of them, do have the storm in the Caribbean. Now, what you'll note is the stronger ones move this a little bit closer to the north up towards Hispaniola. So if this storm does form a little bit sooner, this could move up through the islands here. It could be a concern for Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Jamaica, and Cuba. Absolutely could be something we need to watch. Again, the stronger storms want to pull north, so the sooner it is stronger, the sooner it's going to try to make that turn. Now, we zoom this in like we did on the European, a bit more of a mess here, but you'll notice, again, nonetheless, we've got a couple clusters here I want to point out, one in here, and then another one down here. So the members here that do not develop the storm at all, again, are this kind of southern section and just move it right into Central America like the Euro AI model did. So that is a possibility. Personally, though, again, I'm in the camp that this forms. I think that's just the most likely scenario here looking at the ingredients. But, some of these members on the GFS do form it and then pull it north a little bit quicker. So the European had a lot more members kind of in this region of the Caribbean and Gulf. The GFS, the ones that do develop it, kind of pull it up near the Bahamas before it ever even gets there. So again, it's a possibility. Like I said, before Hispaniola, we feel pretty confident about the track. After Hispaniola, that's where things kind of go downhill in confidence, at least. All right, final thing I'll show you, again, just to briefly mention Area 3. I showed you on the ensembles it is showing up. This is about a week or so out from now. Again, this is a good, 5 to 7 days. Here it is, trying to develop. This is the European model, but you'll notice not a very strong storm and still just out in the middle, of the Atlantic about a week from now. If I move this all the way out to 10 days, it doesn't get very far. So, not too much else to talk about with that one right now. Again, the first two areas I think are a bigger deal, but we'll watch it. Again, it's something that's on the map that the NHC is monitoring. We'll monitor here and keep you up to date. But with that said, that is the latest I have for you here on this Friday. I'll be back tomorrow morning with an updated video for the tropics and just countrywide over the next little bit and tell you what we're expecting. But again, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video. And just have a great rest of your Friday. So with that said, again, have a great one. Stay safe out there. Keep an eye to the sky, and I'll see you all tomorrow.